Wolverhampton Wanderers are living through a complete nightmare in the Premier League.
Delivers the ball for Boltemada! Nick Boltemada! Newcastle's...
Out of all the established Premier League teams, I know that we're pouring in and piling in on West Ham, but I think Wolves look like the worst team.
By the end of 2025, these guys had no wins, like not even one. So much of the season played, yet they had single-digit points on the board. That's it. They were pretty much guaranteed to be relegated just a few months into the season. This isn't just a bad season, it's shaping up to be one of the worst seasons in Premier League history. I guess that's what happens when you keep selling your best players every single year. Even Derby County's infamous 11-point season from 2007-2008 is not out of reach.
It is historically bad, the situation at Wolves, and obviously the comparison everybody makes is Derby County in 07-08. But this is really different, isn't it? Because Derby came up and they weren't ready for it, and this happens all the time. That's like, there's no shame in that. They were just a particularly extreme example of it. But
we saw it twice last season.
Yeah, indeed, and we will see it many times again in the future. But this is different because the ownership at Wolves are really the same owners who led them to their more successful modern periods as well. But it's just kind of fallen apart through their own kind of negligence and their own kind of lack of coherent thinking.
The performances from Wolves have just been flat. Their confidence is gone, their head drops immediately in games, and the mistakes have been piling up.
The players are cowards. Simple as that. There's no beating around the bush. They're cowards. Scored 9 goals in 17 games, 2 points, 1-0. They're going to beat Derby's record of 11 points.
There's no belief. Every week feels the same. They keep the game close, then they lose.
I think we're in every game almost until an hour, and then we concede a goal. And then you kind of just never look like getting back in, which is obviously disappointing as well. And then you concede another one, which is, like I said, feels like the same goal again. Yeah, I don't know, we're going to have to watch it back, but like feels like we're watching the same game back every week.
After each loss, it's just a step closer to the championship for these guys. What makes this collapse even harder to believe is how different Wolves were not that long ago. Just a few seasons back, they were one of the most exciting teams in the league. They were fearless, aggressive, super organized. I mean, under Nuno Espirito Santo, they were beating top 6 sides, finishing comfortably in mid-table, and even playing in Europe. Molineux was a tough place to go, and Wolves had an identity. Now, that version of the Wolves feels like it belongs to another lifetime. So how did it all go wrong? How did a club that once looked like a Premier League success story end up producing a season this bad? Well, to understand that, we have to zoom out and look at the history of this club. Everything changed for them in July of 2016. That summer, Chinese investment group Fosun International bought the club and promised something that Wolves fans hadn't felt in a long time: real ambition. This wasn't just about surviving or drifting along. They wanted Wolves competing at the top again. That turning point came in May of 2017 when Wolves appointed Nuno Espirito Santo as head coach. Almost immediately, things clicked. Nuno brought a clear vision, a calm authority, and a squad built to dominate the championship. With smart recruitment, helped by Fosun's strong connection in Portugal, Wolves didn't just get promoted, they ran the entire league. In the 2017-2018 season, Wolves stormed to the championship title, playing exciting, confident football and sealing their promotion in style. It felt like the start of something big. When Wolves returned to the Premier League in 2018, they didn't act like a newly promoted side just trying to survive. They played with a lot of confidence and fearless football. In fact, they earned a reputation as the Giant Killers. Nuno was backed with experience signings like Rui Patricio and João Moutinho. Around them was a talented core, with Ruben Neves pinging screamers from midfield, Diogo Jota, rest in peace, buzzing around defenders, and Connor Cody leading from the back. Then came Raul Jimenez, a striker who would soon become the heartbeat of the team.
Onto Jimenez, into the penalty, Jimenez! Raul Jimenez!
The results were incredible. In their first Premier League season back, Wolves finished 7th. For a promoted side, that was pretty unreal. They also went on a deep FA Cup run, knocking down some big clubs and reaching the semi-finals at Wembley. Even though they narrowly lost there, it was a sign that Wolves were officially back. That 7th place finish earned them a spot in the Europa League, Wolves' first taste of European football in nearly 40 years. Instead of fading away, Wolves doubled down on that success, and in the 2019-2020 season, they finished 7th again, proving the first season wasn't a fluke. Even better, they went on a thrilling Europa League run, reaching the quarterfinals. Those European nights felt really special. Wolves were beating big names, rolling back the years, and reminding fans of the club's proud past. Their journey ended against Sevilla, the eventual winners, but Wolves left the competition with huge respect. Under Nuno, Wolves had a clear identity. They were compact, disciplined, and deadly on the counter. Raul Jimenez was clinical.
Jimenez might go in alone. Oh, what a goal! That is absolutely stunning!
Neves and Moutinho controlled games. Adama Traore, with his strength and speed, became a nightmare for defenders.
Traore's through, clean on goal to seal it, Adama Traore!
And defensively, since they were a Nuno team, they were rock solid. Week after week, they upset top sides, whether it was Manchester City, Tottenham. Oh wait, Tottenham's not a big team. Never mind. At that point, Wolves were widely seen as the best team outside of the traditional top 6. They were smartly ran, well coached, and exciting to watch. Everything felt stable, everything felt right, but football turns fast. By the summer of 2020, cracks were starting to show. The COVID season was tough, played mostly behind closed doors, and as a result, the magic slowly faded. In fact, after 4 years in charge, Nuno Espirito Santo left the club in 2021. Reportedly, Nuno had some disagreements with the board over playing style and transfer, and there was a general feeling that the project had ran its course. When Nuno left, that pretty much quietly closed Wolves' golden chapter, because what came next was uncertainty, change, and a slow slide downward, one that would eventually lead to the disaster we're seeing today. Because like I said, when Nuno left, Wolves were not the same. The structure, the confidence, that clear identity, all of it started to fade. The club tried to move on, but nothing ever truly clicked again. In 2021, Wolves appointed Bruno Lage, another Portuguese coach, hoping to keep some continuity from the Nuno era. Now, at first, it looked fine. The 2021-2022 season ended with a solid mid-table finish. On paper, it looked like Wolves were stable, but like I said, underneath, the cracks were already there. One by one, the pillars of Nuno's team started disappearing. Jota had already been sold to Liverpool in 2020. Connor Cody ended up being loaned out. Adama Traore, the bully who terrified fullbacks, moved on. And the biggest blow of all came in 2023 when Ruben Neves, the heart of their midfield and the symbol of Wolves' rise, was sold to Saudi Arabia. Wolves kept selling their best players without properly replacing them. They sold quality season after season, and it finally caught up. The recruitments just didn't match the ambition anymore. New signings came in, but very few were at the same level as the players leaving. Slowly, the squad got weaker, thinner, and less reliable. And then of course came the chaos on the touchline. Bruno Lage's second season fell apart almost immediately. Early in the 2022-2023 campaign, Wolves sank to the bottom of the table. The performances were lifeless, goals were rare, and their belief was gone. By October, the club pulled the plug and sacked Bruno. Desperate to save the season, Wolves turned to Lopetegui, a manager who had a big reputation, and it worked, at least in the short term. Lopetegui steadied things, brought in some smart January signings like Craig Dawson and Mario Lemina, and dragged Wolves away from relegation to a safe mid-table finish. For a moment, it felt like the slide had been stopped, but that hope didn't last. Just days before the 2023-2024 season kicked off, Lopetegui walked away. The reasons were very simple: broken promises, frustration over a lack of signings, and disagreement with the club's direction. Very much a similar story to what happened with Nuno. Losing a manager that late in the summer was a disaster, and Wolves were thrown into the chaos again. With no time to plan, they appointed Gary O'Neill on the eve of the season. He inherited a squad low on confidence and short on quality, so predictably, the season started badly, and then it got worse. Wolves failed to win any of their first 10 Premier League games in the 2024-2025 season. Not only that, but they became the first team in Premier League history to go winless in their opening 10 matches in back-to-back seasons. O'Neill was eventually sacked midway through the year and replaced by Vitor Pereira. Pereira was tasked with avoiding relegation, with the team being in 19th place when he joined, with just 9 points from 16 matches. Now, under his leadership, Wolves did eventually scrape together a few wins and narrowly avoided relegation, but the warning signs were impossible to ignore. The fearless, aggressive Wolves of the Nuno era were gone. In their place was a nervous, toothless team just trying to survive week to week. And the real problems went deeper than any single manager. This was the result of years of poor planning. planning. Each summer brought upheaval. Key players left, squad depth was stripped away, big gaps were filled with last-minute signings or hopeful academy promotions. Then midway through the year, Wolves would scramble again, signing short-term fixes just to stay alive. I mean, look at the past summer. They barely avoided relegation and then ended up selling two of their best players, and Matheus Cunha, who was their best player, and Aid Nouri. So this wasn't progress from Wolves, it was survival through panic. And since they had been doing it for so many years, it was obvious that sooner or later, that luck was going to always run out. Their fans could see it coming. Long before the results collapsed, the mood around Molineux had turned dark. Supporters knew that the squad was nowhere near good enough, that the club was unprepared, and that things were headed in the wrong direction. And sadly for them, they were right. Because all the problems that Wolves had been carrying for years finally exploded in the 2025-2026 season. This wasn't just another bad year, this was the collapse everyone had been warning about. Wolves lost their first 4 league games under Pereira. That alone made history. Wolves had never lost their opening 4 league matches before. The performances were worrying, but the body language was even worse. The team just looked disjointed and more open than your local hooker. By late September, they were at the bottom of the table with 0 points. So of course Pereira ended up being sacked. Another reset, but the same problem. And keep in mind too, the Portuguese manager had just signed a new 3-year deal. I don't know why Wolves gave him one considering he had lost the first 4 games of his new campaign, but hey, that's how this club operates.
Breaking news is coming out of Wolves and it is significant. They are bottom of the Premiership, played 4, lost 4, no points, but they have backed their manager. Vitor Pereira has just signed a 3-year contract extension at Wolverhampton Wanderers. So that is what you call backing from the board. Vitor Pereira, 3-year contract extension at Wolves.
This time, Wolves turned to Rob Edwards, a young English coach who had impressed in the championship. But asking Edwards to fix this squad was like asking me to get Bonnie Blue to become a normal human being. You can't. The damage was already done. By December, Wolves still hadn't won a single game. There was no new manager bounce, no spark. The squad simply wasn't good enough for the Premier League. Some of the individual mistakes I would see from this team on a week-to-week basis, it was Sunday league stuff. Edwards tried changing the system, demanding more fight, and sometimes it worked. I mean, there's been moments where Wolves have played okay. In fact, despite their record, in most of the games they play, they're actually competing. But playing well means nothing if you never win. And with every winless week, the pressure only got heavier. Even in press conferences, the mood was bleak.
Liverpool can force you back, obviously we all know that here at Anfield anyway. I thought we started the game first 10-15 minutes, it was not too bad. Plan was fine, but then Liverpool began to force us back. They changed 1 or 2 bits, they got a lot of numbers high, so it was hard for us then to get out. Transition moments were difficult, we gave it away too many times, and then we weren't aggressive enough when we wanted to be in areas that we wanted to try and press.
I mean, Pereira looked broken before he was sacked, and under Edwards, that same sense of doom hung over the team. Wolves weren't just losing games, they legit looked cursed. Some of the numbers I've seen from them is genuinely frightening. They've been one of the worst teams that we have seen in the modern Premier League era. Like, you'd have to go back to the 1800s to find a team that has been this poor at this stage of the season. For years, Derby County's 11-point season was seen as the ultimate low, a record that would never be touched. Yet Wolves are on track to obliterate that record. They look like one of the worst teams in Premier League history. And I guess if we look back, none of this should be really a surprise. The warning signs were there for years. You can't keep selling your best players without replacing them properly. And constant managerial changes destroy any sense of identity. There also seems to be no clear long-term vision from the top. The ownership seems to be more focused on cutting losses and selling assets than building something sustainable. When that ambition disappears, the results will eventually follow. Wolves' 2025-2026 collapse is a brutal reminder of how things can fall apart in the Premier League. One bad decision turns into two turns into a pattern, and before you know it, a club that once played in Europe is staring straight at the championship. Now the question is, can these guys rise again? Because let's be real, relegation is unavoidable. They will almost certainly go down as one of the worst teams in Premier League history. But this is a club that is built on resilience. Wolves have fallen into dark places and climbed back out. I mean, in the 1980s, they dropped all the way to the 4th division. Many thought the club was finished, and instead they fought their way back. They faced near bankruptcy. They've rebuilt from nothing. They've gone from straight chaos to playing European quarterfinals, within the same generation. So that history is proof that recovery is possible. As brutal as relegation will be, it might also be a chance to reset. I'm talking about a proper reset, clearing out players who haven't delivered, fixing a broken recruitment strategy, and doing it all while stepping away from the relentless pressure of the Premier League. Now, the Championship is no joke. Wolves know that well. They dominated not long ago under the same ownership. The big question is whether these guys are willing to back a rebuild instead of repeating the same mistakes that led to this collapse. Fans who have every right to be angry will be watching closely to see if the club finally learns from what went wrong. Wolves still have a loyal fan base, they still have a modern stadium, and they still have a name that carries weight in English football. So one awful season shouldn't erase all that. As Wolves prepare for life in the Championship, the focus will shift from survival to rebuilding. Because right now the pain is raw. I'm sure Wolves fans have accepted relegation long ago. But if history tells us anything, it's that the Wolves don't stay down forever. They will rise again.